Now, the people that published this paper were very shocked at their findings, and there was a huge outcry from the evolutionary community when this was published, because it isn't right? According to their story, it's a major problem. So the people that published the paper said, using our empirical data to calibrate the mitochondrial DNA molecular clock would result in an age of mitochondrial Eve of only 6,500 years ago, clearly incompatible with the known age of modern humans. Like, it can't be right? Because it doesn't match our evolutionary time frame, so we're just going to ignore it. And they come up with all kinds of rescuing devices, to try to make it work. But the fact is staring them in the face that it's a major, major problem when you don't assume that human-chimp ancestry. You don't get the date that they would expect. Now, it's really interesting because Dr. Nathaniel Jensen, who is a geneticist here at Answers in Genesis, he's been looking at mitochondrial DNA sequences. They're in databases. You can compare them from humans all over the world. And what he found is that what we observe with the mitochondrial DNA is absolutely consistent with the biblical time frame and absolutely inconsistent with an evolutionary one. So here's what he found. He said, okay, so if she's 157,000 years old, like the evolutionists say, at least their most recent paper on this, if we use that figure, on average, we know the mitochondrial mutation rate. So on average, there should be about 1,000 differences that we find in mitochondrial DNA, among humans, about 1,000 differences. If she's only 6,000 years old, like the biblical time frame, we should on average only see about 20 to 79 differences because it's less time, So less differences. And so he looked at that because he looked at human mitochondrial DNA sequences and databases from people all over the world. And lo and behold, what you observe is on average, there are 77 differences. What is that consistent with? Absolutely consistent with the biblical time frame, and by orders of magnitude, inconsistent with an evolutionary one. He's even shown this for several animals as well, the exact same thing. There's no way, when you look at the DNA, it is so stinking similar. There's just not that many differences. It doesn't even matter what people group you are. We just don't see that many differences. And that's exactly what we would expect within the biblical time frame that we have of only 6,000 years. So in summary, the male and female ancestor of us all, the biblical Adam and Eve, we know they lived very recently. We know that from the biblical genealogies and chronologies. We know that was about 6,000 years ago. Mitochondrial DNA analysis is absolutely consistent with that. So evolutionists have a lot of explaining to do with this because it just doesn't match their ideas of the time frame. And even if you look at different people groups, now notice I don't use the term races because there are not multiple races of people. We all come from Adam and Eve, so we are the human race. There are different ethnic groups, different people groups, but we all kind of diverged out. Those kind of started after the Tower of Babel. So it's only been about 4,000 years ago or so since that. So of course there's just not that many differences because it's just not that much time has passed.